Hello, Alabama fans, and welcome to the BamaOnLine Big Show. I'm Alabama publisher Tim Watts, actually BamaOnline.com publisher Tim Watts, and we're here with Charlie Potter, team extraordinaire. He's finally sobered up from his run to Milwaukee. He tried to trick us and say he had to stay in Milwaukee for the Wisconsin game. But Charlie, I think that was a choice. Tell us a little bit about your trip.
Well, for the expense report I sent you, it was a little lighter, so you should be thankful for that. But no, Milwaukee, Wisconsin in general is a beer drinking state, and Milwaukee definitely had that feel. Heck, whenever we're getting ready to go, I don't know how many people said you got to drink Spotted Cow, you got to drink Spotted Cow, and Spotted Cow is a hell of a beer. So had a few of those. We went to a couple breweries. We toured the Pabst Blue Ribbon Brewery in downtown Milwaukee. So it was a good time.
Good. Now, let's talk about Alabama right out of the gate because they're coming off South Florida, not really sure what to expect. What were your thoughts when you saw Caden Proctor lined up at left tackle, Booker back at his home at left guard, and Pritchett obviously at right tackle? What were your thoughts there? Because it's the first time this year we've seen it.
Yeah, I think we had that thought going into the game, probably at the start of game week last week, that was what was likely going to happen. From everything we had heard, it sounded like Caden Proctor could have probably went against South Florida if absolutely needed. And then, one of our subscribers actually had an eagle eye watching the game footage or the practice footage that Alabama sent out Tuesday last week. And it was like a half second where you could see him working at left tackle. On Wednesday, Kalen DeBoer on the SEC teleconference came out and said he's practicing. He's looked good. So that was kind of what the expectation was, I think. I think a big question was what was going to happen at right tackle. Would there be a rotation between Elijah Pritchett and Wilkin Formby? And there was late in the game, but for the most part, Elijah Pritchett played the entire game at right tackle. They actually got both Wilkin Formby and Gino Vandemark some work on the right side later in the game, which Nick Sheridan, the offensive coordinator, said those guys earned it in practice. And I think that you can tell that's the case in a lot of positions. They give some guys some work because they've practiced well, they've prepared well. But I think adding Caden Proctor back, having Elijah Pritchett on the right side has really solidified this offensive line. And it comes at a great time because now you have a bye week for them to continue to work together to get those reps. And you have your 5 guys out there when you start SEC play against Georgia.
Yeah, I think the question was, would Proctor play and would he be rusty, right? I think we got answers to that pretty good. Tell us a little bit about the atmosphere. That's not a game that Alabama really gets a chance to play. I mean, going up there, I remember Penn State going up to Penn State back in the day was a unique thing. But Wisconsin, we know a lot about Penn State football, not as much about Wisconsin. Tell us a little bit because I thought the fans were incredible.
Yeah, we went out on Friday night and they were rowdy. That didn't really last on Saturday. I'll say that. The students were slow getting into the stadium, which was a little bizarre, and then they were quick to leave after jump around. I know you guys talked about that Saturday night, but it's unique. What sucks is from our vantage point is the press box, while in a great spot, their press box was a nice setup. It was not in the corner like some of the newer press boxes, but it's closed. So like you can kind of hear things, but for the most part, the atmosphere and just how loud it is, you don't have a good idea of it. And that's a big bummer. A lot of press boxes are like that these days. But yeah, they showed up. It was a full stadium. They striped out the thing. The students were there for 2.5 quarters, I think. And then it was pretty quick, though. Like I think as soon as Tyler Van Dyke went down, the energy in the stadium really left. Any hope that they had, you could tell, was gone, and Alabama kind of did its thing. But for the most part, Madison was a cool college town. I mean, it's the capital city of Wisconsin. It's a big place, but nice place. I don't know if we'll ever be able to go back there to cover a game or Alabama will play there again. But if they somehow do, maybe for a playoff game, even though it's going to be cold as balls, I think anybody should make the trip up there to Wisconsin.
Speaking of might not be able to go back there, Jeremy Bernard. I'm not sure. Jeremy, look, I know he heard it all week. He heard the jump around all week. I know that probably wears on you. You and I talked about this or text about it. And but Jeremy is literally the only person I've ever heard, now that's from my generation, who didn't like jump around because I've never been anywhere. I mean, if a guy was getting a death sentence and they played jump around, the people watching would get hyped. So, what was that experience like? Did you get to experience much? You said you're in the press box, but again, I saw they stayed just for that, and then they got you, like you said, they got the hell out of there.
Yeah, like, you can't hear much, but I'll say this, like, when jump around started, the press box started to kinda bounce a little bit. Like, you could
Oh
feel like
wow,
this. Yeah, it felt like, it's not as intense, but, like, almost like an amusement park ride. Like, it just was, like, a little bit of a bounce, and, yeah, it was exciting. I think you could tell, from the broadcast, from, things on social media, Alabama's players enjoyed it a lot more than Wisconsin's. They were
yeah,
getting into it. I'm sure Jeremy was part of that.
yeah,
But after the game, he kind of let it slip. Watching, I think it was Blake that was over there and recorded it. Watching the video back, it was he said it and kind of paused, talking about that weak ass song.
yeah,
And then, as we know, Kalen DeBoer said on Monday, he kind of addressed the team and apologized. And I don't think it's really anything to apologize for. When you win, you get to say stuff like that. That's kind
yeah,
of the unwritten rule. But I think that they do want to be a classy organization. And heck, Kalen DeBoer probably was upset that the curse word came out of his mouth. But
yeah.
it was a situation where he addressed it because it got out there. It really blew up after the game. And I don't think, no harm, no foul here for me.
Yeah, I think the story really at the end was just that Jeremy voluntarily apologized. I think that was kind of the story that got out, that we wanted to talk about. Again, let's cut. We're going to bring Blake Byler in here in a few minutes. Before we bring Blake in, we want to ask you guys, gals, to like and subscribe. Page has been growing. We have a lot of fun. This is the BamaOnLine Big Show, where we have all 6 of our BOL staff. Coming on later will be Jimmy Stein, Blake Byler. Both will do a tremendous job on the team side. And then we're going to do some recruiting with Andrew Bone, the recruiting editor, and Joseph Hastings, our young guy who stays on the road. But we'll all be in there. So a little bit more about the game. The fast start, the big plays, kind of a fill them out in the first half, and then the end of the first half was 2 plays that were just amazing.
Yeah, the end of the first half, Alabama was really aggressive. You had the long throw to Ryan Williams, which looked kind of like it was mentioned on Monday to Kalen DeBoer, and he kind of talked about it. It looked like the early throw to Emmanuel Henderson that was
Oh,
incomplete. So going back there, Jalen Milroe obviously has confidence in his ability, but it shows that he has confidence in Ryan Williams. And the touchdown throw to Jeremy Bernard was one of the best throws I've seen Jalen make. It was kind of reminiscent. Just is not obviously in the same situation, but kind of down in distance, similar to the throw at the end of the Iron Bowl last
yeah,
year. So he's a guy that he continues to have confidence in this offense. I think that it was interesting. We saw a lot more design quarterback runs from Alabama. I think they were more aggressive in things this week. They still didn't show a ton of things offensively or defensively, but they got into more of a rhythm as the game went on. A lot fewer penalties. I think that's crucial for the offensive line. Jalen had a lot more time back there in the pocket. He wasn't pressured as much. I don't really take a lot of stock in Pro Football Focus outside of the snaps, but like Caden Proctor, you mentioned the rush. I don't think he gave up a pressure in the game. So played well in his he got that first taste of Big Ten football too. So, good for him. He finally got that after a brief transfer to Iowa. But I thought overall the offense played pretty well. But then I think defensively, outside of the long drive, that's kind of two weeks in a row they've had a sustained drive by the offense. I thought they played well from an aggressive standpoint, getting pressure on the quarterback. LT Overton had a huge game. And then the takeaways, they were opportunistic. I think they could have had a few more. Like Keon Sapp could have had a pick six with a kind of a
yeah, they
blitz
could.
where he tipped the ball at the line of scrimmage. But I think there's still things to work on, which after 3 weeks going into a bye week is a good thing. But you'd like to be able to clean things up when you're coming off a 32-point win if you're Kalen DeBoer and company.
Yeah, going back to that big play before the half with Ryan. I mean, if you go back, I watched it several times just because. I mean, the setup on that play with Jeremy lined up on his inside and Jeremy kind of drew the attention of the safety. I don't know. I'm assuming it's by the design, but Ryan also sort of ran like a hitch and then just dropped his hands like he was watching, and then he just took off. I mean, I felt bad. I was like, I don't know if he played possum intentionally. Maybe it was set up that way, but we also saw that big play in the first game of the year the same way where he just leaked out and everybody's like, how in the hell is he so open? But I mean, if you take your eyes off Ryan, you got a problem.
No doubt, yeah. I think he's very crafty as a route runner, and once he kind of lures you in, he has just unreal speed and can get behind you in a hurry. We've seen that several times. Yeah, he's just it's annoying how often we've heard he's 17 years old, but I mean, it is amazing what he's able
It
to do at
is.
such a young age. And, I think he's, tied for the national lead in just explosive plays. I forget exactly what the yardage is. He's near the top in several categories. I mean, he's almost at 300 yards through 3 games. He's got 4 touchdowns. He's been unreal. And to do that in his first road game too, is the touchdown catch. He was quick with it. As soon as he got in the end zone, he threw up the W and broke it over his knee. Like
Yeah.
he's acting like a pro. He's having fun out there. And I think that balance is something that Kalen DeBoer and the staff really like.
Yeah. And I mean, I talked to people talking about him being overhyped. I mean, if he was a sophomore or 19, they'd be talking about him the same way. He's been phenomenal. I mean, he's, again, even compared to a history of wide receivers Alabama's had as freshmen, I mean, he's looking like he's going to end up being right in the discussion for the best. All right, let's bring in Blake Byler. Blake is coming to us, another young man who, Blake, now I'm going to ask you this. I want you to be honest. Had you ever heard Jump Around until this weekend? Had you ever heard that song? I mean,
yes, I'd heard Jump Around.
I feel like
they
you
play
missed
that song in Coleman Coliseum all the time.
Okay, all right. I was making sure that's a youth joke. He's a Blake's so young, Joseph feels old. You know what I mean? So Joseph's like 26 or so. Joseph's like, this kid we hired. Blake, welcome to the show. Glad to have you. Tell us a little bit about your trip to Wisconsin. Just some quick thoughts on being up north.
Well, my trip was short because I flew in late Friday night and I flew out early Sunday morning. So I ended up being in Wisconsin for all of about 30 hours in total. But it was long enough to be there for the game and get to see Alabama's performance. I got to take a ride with Charlie from Milwaukee to Madison and back. So we got to see kind of the landscape of the state. I'd never been up to Wisconsin before. But, the game, I think Alabama really impressed me with the way Kalen DeBoer mentioned this after the game. He used the term business-like to describe the kind of way that the team carried themselves in the locker room before the game and kind of the way they played. And to see Alabama play that way in a big-time road game, we really haven't seen that level of high execution really in a couple years. I would say since really that 2020 team that was blowing everybody out and going undefeated. Because you look over the last couple of years, you've had kind of a lot of tough, close games, whether it be losses to LSU and Tennessee a couple years ago, tight games against Ole Miss, against Texas on the road. You really go down the list, and there are all these games where Alabama played tight and really didn't necessarily play well, didn't play to the standard that we expect Alabama to play against some of these inferior teams on the road. And in this game, we didn't really have any of that. It looked like it could have gotten tight at the beginning, but Alabama's defense settled in after giving up the field goal in the first drive, and then the offense just kind of did its thing and nailed some explosive plays. They ran the ball well, and just overall, from the top down, from the coaching staff to Jalen Milroe to the entire roster, everybody looked kind of calm, cool, and collected and was able to handle business, which I think is really encouraging to see them go on the road into not just a road game, but like a Big Ten environment, somewhere they've never played before, and to see them against a crowd that was hostile early on. They filtered out after Jump Around, but early in the game, they were into it. And so Alabama handled business, and they did it well, and I think that's an encouraging sign.
Charlie, let's talk about the fact how clean the game was. I mean, 4 penalties. Tyler Booker did not believe that false start was on him. I mean, he looked like he's ready to hire an attorney. I mean, I think the play was running. He was looking for the replay. Did you get a good look at what happened there?
Not quite. I mean, Tyler Booker, he is a confident individual, especially in his own ability. And I think for you look at the offensive penalties, and it was just 2 false starts. There's one by Booker and one by Jaden Roberts in the fourth. To have no holdings, I think that's a big step in the right direction. You don't really want to have pre-snap penalties, and I think that's probably something that leads to the frustration from Tyler Booker. I think he prides himself in that, especially being a guy that's right beside the center. It'd be different if maybe it happened last week when he was at left tackle, being kind of on an island out there by himself, but being so close to the ball. He's probably like, there's no way I'm jumping off sides. So it's a situation where it was a much cleaner game. Again, just 2 false starts by the offense. He had a couple of penalties from the defense, including a holding by Damani Jackson. I think that was on the play that Tyler Van Dyke got hurt, and we saw him quickly replaced. But I thought Damani overall played a really solid game, and then an offside penalty in the third quarter. Or the second quarter, excuse me. But it's a game where Alabama had far fewer penalties. They didn't have any turnovers. They were able to get the ball away from Wisconsin. Heck, they forced 4 fumbles, recovered 2 of them. So from a cleanliness and then forcing the other team into mistakes, has to be a nice, not necessarily 180 from a week ago, but damn near close to it. It's what Kalen DeBoer and especially Kane Womack on the defensive side have to be pretty pleased with.
I was kind of surprised by some of the fan feedback after watching the South Florida game that they had complaints against Wisconsin, because I thought it was, like you said, clean and easy, made plays, offensive plays, defensive plays. I mean, it's never perfect, and I think it's almost a cliche and goes without saying that there's always something to work on. I mean, I've never seen a perfect team. You watch the NFL, you watch college, you watch any sport, they're all guys making plays and making mistakes, Blake. Blake?
I'm sorry, you just cut out.
No, I was saying, Blake, what are your thoughts on, how Alabama played overall, teams that make mistakes?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the cleanliness of the game that they had coming off that South Florida game is really what you wanted to see, especially up front on the offensive line, with the 2 false starts being the 2 guards and really 2 guys that you don't expect to commit a lot of penalties, being Tyler Booker, as disciplined as he is, and Jaden Roberts being, a full season into having a starting role. I thought with Caden Proctor and Elijah Pritchett, seeing them at tackles, firstly, that's what everybody wanted to see, as we could tell on the board, on Twitter and everything else. Those are the guys that they wanted to see, to be able to see what the offensive line would look like with a fully healthy starting 5 in there. And for the 2 of them to not have any holding penalties, I thought was really impressive. Elijah Pritchett continued his strong play from the fourth quarter against South Florida, carried that over into this game. And then Caden Proctor, with him specifically, I think his performance was really encouraging because of the way that last year he struggled, because he was a freshman. He was kind of thrown into the fire. And he, especially early on in the season, he was getting beat a lot. So to see a lot of people were expecting him to have a better year, but we hadn't gotten to see him play yet so far. So to get him in the game, to get him in his first start, for him to have the game that he had, no penalties. I think on PFF, he didn't give up a pressure in the game, which was really impressive. So the entire offensive line played a clean game, and then 4 penalties overall. I think that kind of goes back to my earlier point about how kind of calm and business-like this game was for Alabama, especially on the road. Because on the road, Alabama has had a ton of penalties in recent years and been one of the more heavily penalized teams. I mean, you think back to some losses, kind of like I mentioned that 2022 Tennessee game. I think they were penalized 13, 14 times in that game. And really, in a couple of these difficult road games, Alabama's been penalized a ton. So 4 penalties in a road game is really good. I don't care who you're playing or where it is or anything like that. And so that's an encouraging sign going forward. And I think the couple penalties that did happen, like if you're looking at the types of penalties that you're committing, a false start isn't necessarily as bad as a holding that calls back a 74-yard Jalen Milroe rushing touchdown, or as bad as a pass interference on a deep ball, on a ball that was 50-50 anyways, that on 3rd and long that moves a team into field goal range or something like that. Like a false start is a fairly minor penalty, and that's really easy to get cleaned up rather than dealing with pass interferences from your defensive backs or something like that. So I think going forward, especially going into a game against Georgia, which is going to be one of the biggest games of the season, Alabama's going to have to play a clean game there, and this was a good step in the right direction to get there.
I think we probably talk about it, but maybe we can't talk about it enough, is what the Tide staff did in the portal. I mean, the portal guys, these are not, the contributions there. And Damani, how Damani's playing pretty well. We never hear his name. You know what I mean? It was like Pat Surtain's sophomore year. We never heard Pat's name ever after the game started. So he's did a good job. But 2 guys I think we really want to talk about are Parker Parker's did a tremendous job at center. And LT Overton, are you kidding me? He really enjoys, and this stuff's going to pay off down the road for Alabama and Freddie Roach when they're recruiting portal linemen, because he kind of Overton kind of went through a state of purgatory to some degree, and now look at what he's doing, Charlie Potter.
Yeah, first of all, let's hold off on comparing Damani Jackson to Pat Surtain. I think
No, wait, no. Let me be clear, you're right.
Whoa.
I'm saying that we just didn't hear his name.
Yeah, I
on.
know.
Hey,
I know
Pat's,
what you meant.
Okay, Pat's elite.
Pat's a dude.
Pat is that guy. Yeah, very fair point. Very fair.
You're not wrong, though. Damani's played well outside of the holding penalty he had on Saturday. Otherwise, you just didn't hear his name. But yeah, along the defensive front, LT Overton's just been a monster. He had a huge game. I think that his teammates, when he had that hit that forced the fumble, the ball came out so fast, I don't think they knew what to do. Like, it was kind of surprising to them because Wisconsin was able to jump on it. But he's been a huge addition, and I think that change to Bandit has really benefited him. I think it could be a money-making move, honestly. He could be, if he keeps this up, LT Overton could be a one-and-done guy at Alabama. We'll see what happens. He's going to be playing SEC offensive lines here soon. But if he keeps it up, he's on that trajectory. And, yeah, Parker, outside of losing his helmet, at least once a game, he's been really, really good. He didn't give up a pressure in this game. And really, you can talk about a lot of guys because Keon Sabb's been awesome. We saw Jeremy Bernard have a big game, but I know Blake's boy Josh Cuevas had a big play on the road in Wisconsin. So the portal was good to Alabama. Not so much from a Graham Nicholson standpoint. He missed his only field goal attempt, but he'll get more. But overall, yeah, I thought a lot of the portal guys really played well on Saturday.
The helmet's coming off. I was going to ask Blake, because out of all of us on the BOL staff, there's only one who's likely to lose their helmet because of their hair. What is the deal? Are y'all noticing a lack of chin strap? What do y'all see anything when you're out there? Why are there so many helmets? Is it just the way things are now, or what is going on?
I think he's just not tightening his helmet enough. Like, I don't think there's like a necessarily a reason. I don't think it's a way he's playing or anything like that. Some of these dudes just don't put their helmet on tight enough.
I think last week at South Florida, he might have got hands to the face, and that's when you see it pop off.
Yeah.
But I think with Parker, he even got asked. I'm trying to remember what he said. He got asked about it when he came up post game, but he mentioned hands to the face. But otherwise, it's just kind of fluky. And maybe he needs one of those chin straps that kind of looks like the old jock strap. Those never come off.
Yeah, that's the little league. Yeah, that's the little league ones.
And make sure those helmets stay on.
All right, we're going to get out of here. We're going to bring in Jimmy Stein, and we're going to bring in Andrew Bone. But before we do, we want you guys to come to BamaOnline.com. You can see all the covers that Charlie Potter provides. Blake Byler, who has did a tremendous job. I can't say what a great job you've done, Blake. Huge addition. And also, you can come see him on the round table. A lot of questions being answered, a lot of discussions being answered. It's a bye week. This is the best time to kind of figure it out and just see what's going to happen from there. But you guys, we look forward to the later in the week show, and thanks for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Tim.
See you guys. Welcome in Andrew Bone and Jimmy Stein. Jimmy Stein's looking more normal. Last time he had an aura of light behind, and it's happened to me. I did a Zoom call one time, and I don't know why the glare. It was just completely behind me. But welcome to the show, guys. We did the post-game show on Saturday afternoon at a more normal time, so that was pretty good. But welcome in. We want to talk a little bit about Alabama. We're going to talk about the bye week. First bye week under Kalen DeBoer. Coaches be on the road. There's just a lot going on. But before we do, we want to ask you guys to like and subscribe. Hit that thumbs up and, keep the content going if you like it. And, we appreciate the comments you guys jump in there with. Everything. Andrew, Bama coaches are on the road. It's a bye week. Still got practice, still trying to recruit. Massive limits on how much they can go out now compared to what you and I started with. I mean, I feel like it was 56 at one time, maybe dropped to 44. Now they're at 33 visits, Andrew.
Yeah, big difference. During the season, you could go out, coaches go out 56 times, not each one, but combined. You go out and see a lot of your, high-end guys, your commitments, your remaining targets. You go ahead and start evaluating kids for the junior class. And it's kind of changed, obviously dropping down to 33, you're basically only going out and seeing your commitments. Now, back in the day, a lot of those kids were not committed. You were still going out recruiting. You might have had 12, 15 commitments. All your guys were taking official visits in December, in January, and nobody was taking these summer official visits. So the recruiting calendar, certainly moved up. With these, summer official visits, and then the early signing period moving up to December the 4th, changed a lot of things. So now you're just really going out, seeing your guys that are committed, but also seeing your high end players that are remaining on your recruiting board.
Jimmy, adding to that is there's now morning practices at Alabama, so that even further kind of limits when a coach can get on the road. I mean, it's not like that. Kane Womack, or Nick Sheridan's going, hey, it's a bye week, I'm gonna go out and recruit. I mean, they're prepping for Georgia, right?
Yeah, it's such a massive change. I mean, when you think about everything in the building had to change when you switch from afternoon practice to morning practice, the schedule of everyone in the building and what they had done for 17 years, doing it the other way. But there's obviously some benefits to morning practice, which is why Kalen DeBoer moved it that way. I even think as a sideline, I wonder if practicing in the morning might have helped Alabama play so well in an 11 o'clock kick. Perhaps that was a bit of a factor. But yeah, we're working on Georgia this week. It's a normal practice week. They don't have additional time off. They always take Monday off, regardless whether it's a bye week or not. But they are going to practice today, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. They might have a Sunday off. I don't know. That'll be an interesting question for DeBoer later in the week. But with the bye week, I think this staff is going to work more on themselves as opposed to Georgia just yet. And that's the kind of the benefit of having 2 bye weeks. You can use this bye week to kind of work on yourself. The bye week late in the season, that might have to be about resting your injured and banged up guys. But after just 3 games, this is a real good self-scouting week. Okay, what's gone wrong? What do we need to work on? And then we'll worry about Georgia late in the week.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think I'm interested just to see who goes on the road. No, I think we'll see some assistance, but again, I think the guys scheming and putting the game plan in, Kane Womack and Nick Sheridan, obviously will be harder pressed to be on the road. I think Kane Womack was down there with you last night, wasn't he, Jimmy?
Yeah.
Speaking,
he was in Mobile at the bowl. The local bowl game has a kind of a booster group that supports the bowl game, and Kane Womack spoke to the Mobile bowl people.
I feel like they were giving away some awards last night too to some of the local kids. So that obviously is able to be a high profile situation for him to get around. Andrew, we know Courtney Morgan will be on the road, right? Because the benefit of Courtney is what? He's not actually putting in the game plan, so he can go recruit. Plus, he's a very popular guy. People like him and parents like him.
Yeah, I mean, he's built such a strong relationship with so many kids throughout the throughout the class, but also throughout the country. I mean, I feel like every single recruit or parent that we speak with, just like last night talking to Mike Carroll, 5-star offensive lineman, committed to Alabama, talked to his father, and he was talking about, we talked to Courtney, talked to Coach Cap as soon as we got home, or as soon as Mike got home from the Miami visit. But this is, you hear this consistently from everybody. Courtney's such a personable guy, has built so many great relationships with kids throughout the country. We're going to see him out and about this week. I think Latzir Brooks is one of those guys that obviously having a great senior season, is expecting him at his game on Friday night. So yeah, he's going to hit the road, see some kids, and continue to build those great relationships with those kids, with recruits and their families throughout the country.
And you can just pair him with a coach, and a guy like Mo Lindquist, who's going to be a guy that gets out a lot. Maybe Freddie Roach or somebody like that to double team. Jim, one of the things I love switching gears to football about college football is that till about 12:30 Saturday, Georgia was going to beat Bama's brains in. And then by 10 o'clock at night, Bama was beating Georgia's brains in. That was quite the damn emotional swing. And, we keep saying that, they got the Pacino movie, which is great, Any Given Sunday. But, dude, I'm telling you, it's Any Given Saturday. You can get beat now, right?
I don't think there's any sport that proves recency bias theory more than football. I mean, football fans, the vibe of football almost has totally to do with what happened in the last game and ignore the previous games before that. But that's not reality. I mean, Alabama's not going to get that same team that played Kentucky on Saturday in Lexington. Alabama's going to get the preseason number one team, the team that's won 2 of the last 3 national championships. That's what Alabama has to expect. That's what Alabama has to play for. Now, does this Georgia team have flaws? Of course it does. Every team has flaws. That's why, like Tim says, any given Saturday, it's because college football teams are full of flawed teams. Even Alabama teams under Saban that were basically putting 5 number 1 classes on the field, there would be holes. There would be things that team wouldn't do particularly well. And if they're flawed, imagine what everyone else has. So, yeah, this Georgia team's flawed. I think that they struggled a little bit with outside playmakers. I don't think it's a weakness for them. I don't think it's not that they don't have them, but I think losing Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey has had a significant effect on their ability to make plays outside. And I find it odd a little bit that Nate Frazier seems to be like the real threat they have at running back. You would think they would have an older guy ready to go there. But hey, this is going to be a really, really, really good Georgia team. I think any Alabama fan that saw the Kentucky game this past weekend and think, oh, Georgia's not even really a top 10 team, they're fooling themselves. That's just typical of what happens when you play on the road in this league. You're not going to have your A game every week.
I think it's more, football is so mental. People don't, really want to admit that part, but Kentucky just got their brains beat in by South Carolina at home. Hard for Georgia to take it serious. And we heard Saban say it 50 times. And where we hear it a lot is basketball. You see a guy, they have a team, there's small teams around the country. Gonzaga. It took 8 years for people to figure out Gonzaga's about to kick your ass in basketball. They're Gonzaga, I don't even know what state they're in. So definitely, I think, and I'll tell you one thing before we go on, that safety, you got that safety blanket, you got that blanket. And I always felt like, I know JMO was a huge loss the year Alabama lost to Georgia in the national championship game, but I've always felt that Mechie was even bigger because he was his blankie. He was the guy that would work back to the ball and save him. And I think that's what Carson Beck's trying to find after losing Brock Bowers, who was an absolute monster, had 100 yards, almost 100 yards this week, Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, the Georgia team that was in Lexington is not going to be the Georgia team that plays in Tuscaloosa on next Saturday. And,
we hope it is. We hope it is. But we will.
I mean, yeah, you hope so.
It's not.
But Kirby Smart's going to be all over their ass over the course of these next 2 weeks leading up to the game. I mean, it's going to be some tough practices. I always liked going into that Georgia game with I don't want to call it low expectations, but it was always after that Auburn game where you just struggled and you fought and you went on the last play of the game, like the Mechie overtime, last year on Milrose's touchdown pass, and you're going into that game thinking, all right,
absolutely
good to be here, but Georgia's a different animal. This is going to be tough, and then you go and you win that game. Now it's a little bit of a different feeling. You're like, all right, Bama looked awesome at Wisconsin. But the good thing is they did struggle at home in their last game against South Florida for 3.5 quarters. So I think, that kind of motivates your team a little bit more. All right, home crowd is going to be there. It's going to be loud. We didn't give them, a unbelievable performance the last time we were here on Saban Field at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Now let's go out and prove to them that, we can play all 4 quarters against a tough Georgia team.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be an amazing atmosphere. And the one thing, and he's kind of took away a little because you got the 12-team playoff, but this was a decade ago where Alabama lost 9-6, and you thought Alabama was out of the national championship game. I mean, that kind of lessens it. But I do think you're going to see 2 high-level products on the field. Again, the Alabama angle. I mean, they're going to build this. Can Kirby replace? Even Nick Saban said somebody's got to prove they can beat Georgia outside of Alabama. And Georgia still has Ole Miss and Texas, right? It's a different schedule.
And but they're tough games all around for both teams. But this game, I mean, you got a rocky road the rest of the way if you lose this game.
Yeah, for Georgia, though, I will say, Jimmy, I want you to touch on this. Bama's used to this.
Yep.
Georgia's had, I mean, they had long times where Tennessee was down, one of their biggest rivals in the East. They had long times when the Gators were down, that since Urban Meyer left, and not getting any better. But Jimmy, I mean, that's another thing to factor in is these teams are getting better. Missouri's a legitimate team, and this schedule got a lot tougher for them.
I think whoever loses this game, whether Alabama loses or whether Georgia loses, whoever loses the game will still be favored by the odds makers to make the playoff. Whoever loses is still, quote, in per the odds makers. But like you guys said, the margin for error gets kind of scary for both because Georgia still has to go to Austin. Georgia still has to go to Oxford. These other teams, like Tim pointed out, are good teams. Alabama, imagine if Alabama loses. I think one reaction that we're commonly going to see is, it's okay. It's Georgia. It's not going to ding you that much. It's just one loss. Alabama's still in. That would be true. But now you've got to beat Missouri at home. You've got to win maybe 2 of those 3 road games at Norman, at Knoxville, which looks harder every week, in Baton Rouge. You've got to win those games now. It's going to be whoever loses this game is going to have a suspenseful remainder of the regular season.
Yeah, I think we can say the same with this Auburn game this week, right? Auburn, Oklahoma. That's this week, right?
Next week.
Well, I'm sorry. Let's skip to the other, Florida, Mississippi State. I mean, this is kind of the like Billy torture tour. You know what I mean? Now, Mississippi State's a winnable game. Yeah. You almost feel bad because I don't know what you do in that situation.
For who? A winnable game for who?
That's just an open-ended statement. You know what I'm saying? Because you can't tie anymore, right? Can you still tie? I don't even know. But you do have Arkansas at Auburn. I don't have no idea what to make of that game. We've got some interesting games. Not a great slate for an off weekend, but I thought we'd see a little bit more. But for these teams going in and battling like they are, there's a lot of coaches' jobs on the line right now. I mean, if Mississippi State's losing to Florida, that coach is probably catching some heat right away, right, Jimmy?
Yeah, I mean, Mississippi State, I watched a lot of that game. I had some Mississippi State people in my house Saturday. I actually watched a lot of Mississippi State Toledo. They were really bad. And I know it's year one, and I know Levy's got to build that roster, and it's going to take a while. But Mississippi State was so bad, I'm almost 100% convinced Florida's going to win. And I'm fully aware of Florida's problems. That Mississippi State team, Vanderbilt, I've seen Vanderbilt too. Vanderbilt's better than that Mississippi State team that I saw Saturday.
You want me to tell you how bad it is? Jimmy, it's so bad. Florida's 5.5-point favorites in Starkville.
That's not enough. I like Florida. I like Florida to win. Graham Mertz or DJ Lagway. It doesn't matter, or whoever the third guy is. Florida will probably out talent Mississippi State and win that game. I don't know that it's going to buy Napier any goodwill though.
No, there's no goodwill. I mean, they were trying to fire him at halftime.
I looked at their schedule yesterday and Florida's schedule, and it's like that might be the only remaining win on their schedule. I mean, it could be. I mean,
let me tell you something hilarious. FSU's got Cal this week, right?
Yeah.
We are sitting here thinking, hey, the first 4 games aren't that hard. Cal's a legitimately solid team. They're going to push you defensively. And I mistakenly mentioned the Oklahoma-Auburn game. I was talking about the Oklahoma Josh Heupel is going back to the alma mater who fired him. Heupel might be a little crazy out there. He's onside kicking against teams. He's going to beat 100-0. I'm not sure he's going to let off the brakes. There's a lot of pressure on this game.
I like Tennessee big in that game for that reason. I think Tennessee's not just showing up to win this game. Tennessee's showing up to win this game by a lot. Oklahoma's hoping to win by a half of 1 point. Tennessee's showing up to win by 5 touchdowns.
All the points.
Ultimately, I don't know that they do, but ultimately I think that the difference in personality, the difference in attitude is going to be enough. Tennessee's going to show up to move way up in the rankings. That's going to happen too. I think Tennessee, with an impressive win this week, jumps in the rankings. And it could get weird in Norman too if Tennessee wins by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, Oklahoma's not been very good. Well, we're going to let Jimmy Stein get out of here. For you people looking for him, you can find Jimmy at BamaOnLine.com. He joins Charlie Potter and Blake Byler doing a great job covering the team. And Jimmy also dips his toe into recruiting. And we like to talk about just about everything from Taylor Swift to the newest movie look at Jimmy get excited. I just say certain names on this show to watch Jimmy's reaction like this. Watch this. Ryan Williams.
5-star.
Jimmy, we appreciate you being here and being a good
Taylor
sport.
Swift, 5 stars. Taylor Swift, also a 5-star.
Jimmy Stein is a 5-star. Jimmy, we appreciate you being on the show. We'll see you later in the week and enjoy the little bit of time you get off here. And we'll talk to you soon.
See you guys.
Hey, Jimmy.
All right, let's bring on Joseph Hastings. Joseph, as y'all know, is our recruiting analyst. He comes in here with me and Andrew. He's our better half, our third. I'm just kidding. He's Andrew's better half. If I'm ranking him, all I know is I'm number one. I'm not really worried about number two. But Joseph, welcome to the show. Spent the first talking to Charlie Potter about some team, his trip, jump around. Joseph, are you familiar with jump around?
Yes, I am familiar with jump around.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm not that young.
I'm just saying you're pretty young. I mean, you're probably like negative of 13 when that song came out.
I think I was
I mean?
2 or 4 years old when it come out.
Was it? I don't know when it came out. It's been
Yeah,
out since
I think it came out like 01 or something.
Well, guys, let's get into a little recruiting stuff. We're going to start with Michael Carroll. Very interesting with Michael visiting Miami and the instant freak out of, taking a visit. I mean, these kids say they're going to take visits and all that stuff. I think what Michael scared us the most was when he said, I want to get what I'm worth. And everybody made a big deal of that. But look, Michael said what everybody's trying to do and what everybody's thinking, right? I mean, this isn't something new. He just said that silent thought in your head. He just said it out loud for us to hear, Andrew.
Yeah, and you have to kind of look back at Mike Carroll. I mean, this is a kid who lived in Pennsylvania for several years and moved to IMG Academy back in in July. First time away from his family. He's at this new program. He's the big dog on campus at his high school, and then he arrives at IMG, and he's surrounded by a lot of other highly talented kids that are being recruited and are committed to schools kind of all over the country. And he gets there, and not only does he get there as a highly talented kid, he gets there and is continuing to perform at a very, very high level. And we had a great interview with his head football coach at IMG last week on BOL, talking about how this is the biggest athlete that he has seen in over a decade at IMG Academy. Just incredibly impressed with his performance so far this season. And that's gotten him a lot more attention. Miami, all over him, extended him off for a couple of weeks ago, goes down for a visit. But the big thing about the visit is his parents did not go on that trip. He was down there with his teammates at IMG, and goes down there, says a few things to the media, but then comes back, talks to his parents, talks to the Alabama coaching staff. We've got an interview on BOL right now with his father about where things stand with Alabama, where things stand with Miami. Kind of where things are going moving forward. But I think after that conversation, felt a lot better about where things stood with Alabama.
Yeah, I think when you get a guy you get into that big environment, and also you got to remember, I mean, this is not a shot at him, but kids lie. I got 4 of them. You know what I mean? I fact check them every time they tell. If they tell me they ate spaghetti, I'm doing the research. But kids lie, so they're in that locker room bragging about everything they got. Now, some of them are going to have big NIL deals, but some of them are going to brag and kind of push that envelope too. And Joseph, that IMG, that's a different culture down there just because of how many big fish are in that pond.
Definitely. And a couple of years ago at the Under Armour All-America game, I got to speak with some kids who had already signed, some from IMG, some nationally, about NIL. And these are high-profile NIL recruitments that we knew about, that was reported on. And when we asked them about it, and I asked them, how much did NIL play a role in your recruitment? It was not too much. Didn't really care about it. Wasn't looking for any big deals. I know this was a couple years ago. A lot of things have changed since then, but that's you kind of appreciate the honesty when you get someone like a Michael Carroll go on record saying that that's something that is being factored into his recruitment. But yeah, well, with that environment at IMG, it's national players, big time, high profile recruits. You when you go to IMG, kind of looking to get a little bit more national attention and to play against national competition and to really put yourself on the big stage. And Michael Carroll, going to Alabama, playing in the SEC, going up against teams like Georgia, Tennessee, Texas, others, you're going to be going up against those top teams every week. So he wants to be a part of that culture and that atmosphere at IMG.
I think the biggest myth for adults when it comes to the NIL is it's all just the biggest bag. That's not really necessarily the case. We've not found that to be true. I mean, Nick Saban obviously proved it wasn't true. Alabama has guys, and Alabama is going to be they're going to be active in the NIL, but they also have to be responsible with their checkbook. I think most programs are going to be that way, but Alabama's going to be competitive, and some kids take less, and I don't think it's that surprising to find out, if you're comfortable at your job as an adult and somebody offers you a little bit more, even 20% more, you don't necessarily leave for that money, especially if you can get a 10% raise from where you're at. You'll stay because you're comfortable. I mean, the kids are often the same way, Andrew.
Yeah, I think a big part of it's relationships, where you're comfortable. And it's not just with coaches, it's with players. But, it's going back to Mike a little bit, I remember him coming to Tuscaloosa back in the spring and, talking to his father about that visit. And he connected really well with the players on the team, not just the coaches. And he would go to other programs, Michigan, Georgia, wherever it was, and not have that sort of, connection with the players. Didn't communicate with those guys after the visit was over. But Alabama players were communicating with him, texting him, encouraging him, not necessarily recruiting him to Alabama, but hey, this is what you should do. This is what you should pay attention to. And I think that helped. And that's going to help with a lot of different kids. I mean, you have that sort of relationship connection with the players on the team, coaches, and not just coaches on the field. You're talking about your support staff. We talked about Courtney Morgan earlier, but there's a lot more people that work in that Alabama, football department outside of just Courtney Morgan that players build really strong connections with throughout the entire process. And you learn more about the strength and conditioning program, the medical staff, the training staff, the nutrition staff. All those are big factors into a decision. And it's not just NIL. NIL is part of it, and it's going to be part of it for a long time. And as you said, Alabama's in that. They're going to be in it, but they're not always going to be, the top dollar amount when kids make that decision. So you got to include all the factors in there, not just how much money you're getting paid by X school.
Yeah, and I think one fact, and we're going to get away from Carroll after this, but Michael was the first offensive line domino to drop, right? He was the first offensive line commitment. I think Mal followed him soon after. Jackson. Was Haywood after DeBose?
Then Haywood after Haywood.
Haywood was in July.
So, yeah. So, I mean, he was one of the first guys to jump on board. And, again, a tremendous talent guy who has a chance. I mean, they could lose Roberts. They're definitely probably going to lose Booker. And he has a chance. I mean, he's got as likely a chance to come in and compete for a starting job as anybody on this team. Christian Robinson, not a lot of Bama staff on the road recently, but Christian Robinson did make his way to see Justin Hill. This week, we're expecting more to be out, Joseph. I got Andrew's thoughts earlier. What are your thoughts? 33 limit, 33 shots out. Again, if you visit Thompson and Hoover, that's one against each of them because you can only go to that school once. I remember me and Andrew, coaches used to go to the same school every Thursday at 10 a.m. where everybody knew their name when they walked in.
Yeah, you got to be pretty selective with these visits, obviously, and there's a lot of planning that goes into them and the timing of the visits when you want to line everything up compared to the rest of your schedule in the fall. I think the one thing that Alabama staff has really shown a good job of, though, throughout the year, this new staff, it's been of organizing and, keeping things on schedule. We talked about in the spring how they would host over 100 visitors in what, like a single day or, single stretch of time where they would be able to get all those kids on campus, and there's a long process that goes into that, checking in, making sure that they spend time with the coaches, get that meeting with Kalen DeBoer. So I think they've shown a really good job of organizing, and I don't doubt that's going to be the case when the coaches hit the road. And going back over to that Christian Robinson visit, Justin Hill last week, his team is doing exceptional, by the way. He had 2 tackles, half a sack. a couple tackles for his loss. His coach texted me this morning that he has 16 tackles, 4.5 sacks, and 5 tackles for loss this season. He's doing a really good job this year.
I watch his games after the fact. He gets a lot of attention from
Yeah, he
those.
does.
I mean, to have 4.5 sacks, amazing, because they're not only are they, keeping him from inside, but they have somebody chipping on the outside. He looks the part. You talking about somebody that looks the part? I think Justin's right there with that. Let's talk about a couple positions before we get out of here. Safety, Andrew Bone. Still some targets out there. Derek Smith's supposed to be coming for the Georgia game. I think you have to say allegedly, like my show letter, Kenny, allegedly. Derek's coming, but we know his brother Eric's supposed to be there. So Derek's the guy they're still looking at. Andrew, let's talk about him just a little bit.
Yeah, no safety commitments right now. So the biggest, question, I guess one of the biggest questions remaining is who's going to be that safety commit in this class. And the majority of the guys that Alabama is recruiting right now are all committed elsewhere. There's not really any guys that we've seen that are non-committed, but Alabama's still in communication. They're going to get some kids on campus this fall. Derek Smith, confirmed that he's going to be in Tuscaloosa for that Georgia game next weekend. So big to get him on campus, especially with Auburn having its home game against Oklahoma on the same day. Does that mean anything? In my opinion, probably not, but getting him on campus is a step in the right direction. I mean, we remember last year, Ryan Williams skipped the Alabama home game against Tennessee to go to a game at Auburn, and everybody freaked out. Oh, that means he's flipping. He's not going to Alabama. There was so much celebrating on the other side of the state. We're not going to be celebrating this visit. It's just a visit. It's a game visit. See what happens afterwards. See if he comes back. It's a huge game. Top 4 matchup against 2 of the best teams in the country. Does it mean a little bit more? We'll know after that visit. But getting Derek back on campus is a good thing for Alabama.
Andrew, speak for yourself. If he shows up, I'm streaking the quad.
Well, I know how you're going to be, but
just your neighborhood. I'm gonna run through your house streaking. That's it. I'm gonna tell your wife and kids get out, and then I'm coming through, blinding you, and heading to the crib.
YouTube is going to demonetize this video just for that.
I'm about to get rich. Then we're about to get paid. You thought old school was popular. Wait till you see the BamaOnLine Big Show. And a quick reminder for you guys, give us a like and subscribe, that thumbs up. We enjoy the content here. We enjoy having fun. I mean, I think we have the most fun on Tuesday because it's so loose. We get a little bit of everybody in here, and everybody's pretty relaxed. But Joe, let's switch over to this defensive line. We've had a busy week so far. Last night we had a decommitment, and this morning we have a Florida Gator commitment. Looking at the Tide, tell us a little bit about what's happening with the defensive line.
Yeah, Joseph Mbachu. Pretty interesting story with him. Didn't start playing football till I believe a couple of years ago. Really still learning, what to do and how to use his hands and how to use his big frame that he has there. But Alabama extended an offer to him last month. Freddie Roach had seen him earlier this year. So once again, as we talked about, with these recent offers, you think it's maybe a last minute thing from Alabama. No, the evaluation process has been taking place throughout the year. And, they've seen some of these guys. They've been in communication with them, and Mbachu's one of them. Expected to visit for the Georgia game. We'll see if an official visit is scheduled later. That's kind of the case with a lot of these recent offers. Get them on campus for an unofficial, maybe 2, and then see if maybe a official visit will be scheduled later in the year. Christian Ingram was another recent offer from Alabama, 6'6", 285 pounds. On threes, Jeremy Johnson saw him in person and did not dispute that height and weight that he had himself tabbed at. So he recently got offered as the Timothy Griffin, who visited for the USF game, another defensive lineman out of Georgia. And we also can't forget Justice Terry. I think we're going to bring up Justice Terry anytime we talk about prospects that Alabama's going after, especially along the defensive line. You have to mention Justice Terry, five-star plus defensive lineman out of Manchester, Georgia. Visited for the USF game, expected to visit for the Georgia game, took his official in June. So you like that you're getting him on campus, as often as possible. So that's where things kind of stand with the defensive line recruiting. Bama's got 2 right now committed in London Simmons and Steve Mbumau, who's at Southwest Mississippi Community College. So we'll see how things play out over these next few weeks along the D-line.
Andrew, we're still seeing Alabama doing some things in the secondary. They obviously have Dijon Lee, who's, him and Chuck McDonald, 2 of the top 5 cornerbacks in the country. Tell us a little bit about an Ole Miss commit Bama might be trending with, Mason Dunn. And also, is that door completely shut with an Auburn commitment where Alabama's still having some communication?
Yeah, Mason Dunn took a trip over to Alabama a couple weekends ago for the USF game out of Tupelo. Definitely one of the top risers in at On3 right now. I mean, having a great senior season, and certainly a guy that Alabama has sunk their teeth into, and that they're heavily recruiting, trying to get him back over for an official visit. I think Mo Lindquist has already gone out and seen him this season, so he's certainly a guy that we're watching very closely. Ole Miss having a great year. Does that play any part in his final decision, or with Lane Kiffin? Is he going to get recruited to end up somewhere else maybe? So we'll kind of wait and see how that all plays out. But with Naheem Alford, 5-star cornerback, committed to Ohio State, went to Alabama for an official visit back in June. I think he came back maybe the following week, but hasn't been back since. He's mentioned getting back for a game at some point this season. Don't think that's going to be next week. I think he's going over to Auburn for the Oklahoma game. Auburn's probably the school that I'm watching closest with Naheem Alford. Been there a lot. They've certainly put a lot of pressure on him to stay in state. Alabama just kind of seems like they're on the outside looking in right now, but we'll see if anything changes down the road. Those are kind of the two guys. And Tavius Richardson, who's a USF commitment as a safety that was offered by Alabama a few weeks ago after taking a visit. Alabama's still in communication there. Could bring him back for an official visit. So we'll see. But not a lot of guys that are out there, but there are a few. And I think Alabama's going to end up with at least one more defensive back in their class.
Yeah, the thing I find interesting, we said going into this season there'd be new targets emerging, and we've seen them. And I mean, that's the thing. It seems quiet, but it's not really quiet. I mean, you see guys still being recruited, the contact. People make a huge deal of there still being contact. Well, there's contact, and then there's contact. You know what I mean? There's the kid reaching out to you, the kid trying to come for a visit, or the kid's being respectful and just responding to a coach that he probably liked no matter where he committed. So a lot going on for Alabama behind the scenes. This is a good 2-week stretch, although obviously getting ready for the Georgia game is going to be important. But the one thing they've got is a lot more time to be on the phone also. They've got time to call, make calls, reach out, obviously face-to-face. So pretty excited to see what happens.
And not just targets, the commitments as well, because you have, as we've seen over the course of these last 3 weeks, is there, Alabama commitments have been out on the road, each week, visiting different college campuses, checking things out, still listening to other schools. So you're not just recruiting your targets. And as you mentioned, Tim, it's not quiet. It's still very loud behind the scenes. There's still a lot of recruiting going on every single day. But you got to recruit all the way until that early signing period on December the 4th.
And a lot of these visits can change in a minute. We saw Ced Morgan, who is, told us he was coming in the morning. He had a family emergency who couldn't make it to the last home game. And Duke Johnson was supposed to head to Florida State. I'm pretty sure Florida State said, "Nah, don't come right now. Don't watch the game. Don't come. Here, go watch The Godfather 1, 2, and 3." Joseph, tell us a little bit about Duke, where everything's standing. You had a good interview with him on BamaOnLine earlier this week.
I thought you were going to tell me to tell you about The Godfather, that trilogy.
No, there's no prayer. You've seen it. There's no prayer with it.
Yeah, I had to catch my breath on that one. Duke Johnson had a really good interview with him. And, Bone mentioned it there that, about talking with your commitments. That's something that Duke told us in his interview with BOL, that Alabama does a really good job of staying in communication like they're uncommitted, really prioritizing not only speaking with them, but also with their parents as well. He says that's the case for the entire staff. He hops on a weekly Zoom call with Colin Hitchler, safeties coach and defensive coordinator / future position coach Kane Womack, every single Wednesday. Every single Wednesday, they're hopping on a Zoom call, talking about his season, talking about how excited they are to get him on campus later this year / early January, whenever he officially arrives. He stated that he's feeling really good about his commitment to Alabama. Obviously, other schools are still communicating with him. He's one of the top players in the country. He's had 30-plus tackles combined, over his past couple of games, doing a really good job. And also just shouting out his team. They've gone from 1-9 last season to 4-0 this year under new head coach Phillip Brown. They're doing a really good job, and that's kind of where his focus is right now, them in Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these guys, I mean, you kind of tell by their actions and how they act. Again, I think there's nothing more upsetting than a kid taking a visit. I mean, these kids, they're still kids. I mean, I've been to Auburn. I don't think it was a flip watch. Andrew's been to Auburn. I mean, that tattoo on his shoulder, we got a lot of, I wasn't supposed to mention that, but, Saturday night, what happens in Auburn stays in Auburn. But yeah, I mean, kids like to take visits and hang out with their friends. And how many times was Justice Haynes hitting the portal because he went home? He lives in Georgia. They're like, oh shit, he's in Georgia. Yeah, he lives there.
Dude,
Oh,
I
he's
want
at.
people to know that Atlanta is 2 hours away from Athens. Also.
I think that like you just, you get that. I mean, Andrew and I could tell there's been a lot of kids that showed up at Tuscaloosa just to hang out. They weren't all flipping. I mean, who remembers during was that Holden who was at LSU during COVID hanging out and partying? Wasn't that Trayshawn Holden, Andrew, that was am I remembering that right? I mean, these kids know each other. They like to hang out and they like to do stuff together. So before we get out of here, Andrew, give me a 30-second thought. About that tattoo. Give me a thought on that tattoo.
I'll say this: there's no tattoo on my back. Nothing resembling Auburn on my body. So, yeah, I think that this is a good week for Alabama to kind of regroup, especially on the recruiting front. You got a chance to look at your recruiting board, see who's still out there, see who you feel comfortable with, see who's going to be coming in for the Georgia game next week. Start making your calls, setting that guest list, because you can't bring everybody to Tuscaloosa. You got to set it to your priority guys. A lot of commitments that are going to be back in town, a lot of top underclassmen, but try to work hard to get your top priority guys there. We know Justice Harry is going to be back in town. Who else is going to be there? As far as your 25 guys, Derek Smith, several others. So we're going to have that complete list on BOL updated this week and next week. So go check it out. And obviously coaches are going to be on the road later this week.
Joseph, 30 seconds.
Yeah,
Andrew just spoke. Andrew can't. We need to get Andrew a watch for Christmas. Remind me.
Just look, about 32 seconds.
32? Okay. If you count it, I'll believe you. I don't believe you. But Joseph, go ahead. You get 32.
I did just make that up.
Yeah, it was 50 seconds. I timed it.
You get 32. Joseph, you get the same length. Joseph timed it. Andrew timed it. Go.
All right, let's highlight some of these commitments for Alabama and how they've performed, in high school ball on Friday nights. Keelan Russell, 20 of 26, 250 plus yards, 4 total TDs against St. Francis Academy, top 25 team in the country. London Simmons, 4 sacks last week. Duke Johnson, as I mentioned, 30 plus tackles over the past couple of weeks. Dijon Lee has three interceptions.
You're missing one. You're missing a big one.
Who am I missing?
Oh my gosh.
Who am I missing?
Latsier.
Oh, Latsier, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I figured you would jump in with him anyways.
Go ahead. Brilliant performance by Mr. Brooks.
Yeah, 9 receptions, 200 plus yards. I mean, he does everything: offense, defense, special teams. I mean, Alabama's commitments are showing out on Friday night, so it's been really impressive to see.
Well, guys, we appreciate it. We'll have us a little recruiting show later in the week, or we'll just sit here and watch The Godfather together with Joseph, and we'll watch his reaction. Dude, it's a classic. It's an instant classic. Even 3's good. They're just really mad about the director casting his daughter. But as always, we appreciate you guys joining in. You can find us at BamaOnLine.com on the roundtable. We're headed there now. We're dropping all of our opinions. They're worth $1. You can check BamaOnLine.com out, and you'll find Andrew there. Andrew, would you like to say adieu, goodbye, adios?
Yeah, thank you guys and gals for watching the show this week. We'll be back later on, but go check us out at BamaOnline.com. A lot of great content, a lot of great conversations on the BOL Roundtable, which is our premium message board. So we'll see you over there if we don't see you back on the show later this week.
Mr. Hastings?
About to go watch The Godfather. Prego.
He's not. See you guys next week, and thanks for joining.